India has made significant changes to some of its policies that discriminate against U.S. trade and investment since Narendra Modi became Prime Minister on May 26, 2014. I'm not saying this. The U.S. International Trade Commission has published a report, and I've been reading out of that, which it is a report that is reviewing the trade and investment policies in India 2014 to 2015 from the point of view of the United States and companies belonging to the United States. To understand the rationale for this report, George Sibley, Minister Counselor for Economic, Environment, Science and Technology Affairs at the U.S. Embassy, joins us on Power Lunch this afternoon. Mr. Sibley, good afternoon. Thanks very much for joining us. I was talking about the USITC report, and it takes note of the fact that India has made significant changes in policies that discriminate against the U.S. What are these significant changes exactly?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Manvi, for having me on your show. It's a delight to be here, and I want to send greetings to all of your viewers. It's a pleasure to be here. I should also point out that the USITC is an independent federal agency, so this is a report that they prepared at the behest of the Congress. So the U.S. Congress, the Ways and Means Committee, and the Senate, the Finance Committee were the ones who requested this report. And they've produced their results. They examines the actions taken by the Modi government since May 2014 through July 2015. And really, they cite sort of four particular areas of interest where they see some changes. Certainly, on the foreign direct investment would be one of them. The second one that I would mention would have to do with tariffs and customs procedures. The third one has to do with local content requirements and localization. And finally, the fourth one has to do with standards and technical regulations. In addition to those four, where they identify changes, they also talk a bit about intellectual property rights and the situation of the general business environment in India. So that's essentially the structure of the report that they've done.
Just want to get a clarification up front. This report, prepared by the USITC, has been prepared keeping in mind U.S. interests, right? It's from that point of view.
Yes, it's actually a follow-on to an earlier one, which they had also done with the previous government. And there was a recognition at that time that with the new government, there was likely to be changes in policies. And so they wanted to also have a more accurate and up-to-date evaluation. But you're quite right, of course. They're interested in how it affects particularly American businesses, but a lot of their findings really reflect how international businesses operate within India.
Let's talk about the easing of FDI caps in greater detail. Map the specific gains for the U.S. and for U.S. companies.
Well, I think the gains specifically, they refer to what's happened in defense, in insurance, some of the ease of receiving approvals that have taken place. I wouldn't say that necessarily they've translated directly into gains for particular U.S. companies, but it does express a different environment, a more welcoming environment for foreign investors. And this certainly is a benefit to U.S. companies to have the opportunity to grow and expand their business in India. And certainly it's a significant benefit for India in the sense that it provides an opportunity for more investment to come in, more jobs for Indians, more manufacturing in India, which of course is a major push by the Modi government. So really the increase in FDI, while it benefits U.S. companies, is a win-win for both the United States and India.
Sure, fair point. The changes in tariffs and custom procedures that the USITC is taking note of, I have to admit I'm a little bit baffled. How material really are those changes for the United States?
I think on the tariff changes, they're fairly modest. On the customs procedures, we are seeing some changes. The biggest change, Manvi, that would be wonderful to see would be depositing the Articles of Accession for the Trade Facilitation Agreement. This is an agreement that India has joined within the World Trade Organization according to the World Bank, there's a very significant gains in terms of reducing friction in trade. Those are gains that certainly would accrue to U.S. businesses and U.S. traders, but certainly also to Indian businesses and traders to allow faster customs clearance. And in that respect, the report does note, for example, that since the new government has come in, there's a customs availability 24/7, which is a very welcome change. But there are other changes that lubricate trade. They're not specifically changing the trade. They make it easier, they make it faster, and they reduce the costs. So we very much look forward to India joining the Trade Facilitation Agreement.
Okay, I have to admit to a certain amount of confusion as I ask the next question. What are the changes in the local content requirements and the localization measures that the USITC report is taking note of that are actually beneficial to U.S. companies?
Yes, so those are obstacles for the U.S., not benefits. The question I think that the Indian government has to grapple with and is the question of how do you implement the vision that Prime Minister Modi has enunciated very clearly and repeatedly of Make in India. What does that mean? And our understanding and certainly our hope is that this really reflects a desire for India to become a robust, full-fledged member of the global supply chain. And being part of the global supply chain means that you are manufacturing for supply chains that occur, perhaps are assembled in other countries. Other countries are manufacturing for supply chains that may be assembled in India. So there's an integrated effort to join a global supply chain, not specifically only one country specific. And that will greatly increase India's trade and manufacturing without restricting it to being simply 100% everything is done in India, which is not the case in the United States or any other country that is part of the global supply chain. So when we look at local content requirements, that seems to be restricting that aspect of global supply chain. So that is an area of concern. And it's a hangover really from the previous government. And so we're watching that, and it's part of the report. And we hope that that will become less of a concern going forward in the future.
But Mr. Sibley, I actually see a divergence between your interpretation of Make in India, which is having India as part of a globally integrated supply chain, and how the government has enunciated Make in India and how it's actually playing out on the ground. Do you see those two sort of interpretations of Make in India really converging?
No, Manvi, I think, it is a work in progress, and certainly we're watching it, but I would take a slight difference from you. I think the leadership in India have a sophisticated understanding of what it is to manufacture globally in 2015. It's a different world than it was 10, 20, or 30 years ago. And of course, it won't happen overnight. But I think we are quite optimistic that India will become a robust member of the global manufacturing community, and it will absolutely benefit India to do so, benefit Indian jobs, and also integrate India into the global manufacturing world.
This USITC report comes out almost around the same time as a World Bank ranking on ease of doing business around the world, where India has moved up 12 spots. What do you make of India moving up the league tables on ease of doing business?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, I would say it's certainly a welcome development that India is moving up in the rankings in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business. We're delighted to see it. I think, when you consider a government coming in, having been in place a relatively short time, there's a very strong likelihood, I would say almost a certainty, that in the years ahead, India will move up even further and faster on that ranking, and we look forward to seeing that happen. One area, if you were to look at the rankings and see, it's broken down into 10 different sub-rankings, and then it's sort of combined. In the area of contract enforcement, India probably lags further behind than in most of the other areas. So if India were to focus on that as a significant area, it would probably be very effective in moving up. And this is just a matter of having contracts enforced and having an ability to achieve an outcome in arbitration or a judicial outcome that allows the companies that come to feel confident that when they engage in contracts within India, it will be honored and enforced in a timely and transparent manner. And again, I think the prospects for it moving in this direction, based on everything that the Modi government has said and the ministers in the Modi government has said, are very hopeful that India will move well up on this list in the future.
Well, George Sibley, thanks very much for joining us on NDTV Profit today. Good talking to you, and hope to touch base more frequently.